Singapore is a very small, heavily urbanized island city-state in Southeast Asia, located at the end of the Malayan Peninsula between Malaysia and Indonesia. Singapore has a total land area of 724.2 square kilometers. Singapore is separated from Indonesia by the Singapore Strait and from Malaysia by the Strait of Johor. The 5 stars of the Singapore flag represent the country's ideal: progress, peace, justice, equality, and democracy. The crescent represents a growing young nation. The capital is the city of Singapore, which is why Singapore considers it a city-state. The official languages of Singapore are English, Malay, Mandarin, and Tamil. The national language is Malay, and the national anthem, Mayula Singapura, is sung in this language. However, almost everyone in Singapore speaks more than one language, and some people speak 3 or 4 languages. To foster national until a national identity, the Singapore government promoted the use of Malay as the country's national language. English serves as the language of administration and tourism. Mandarin is used as a language for the Chinese rather than dialects like Cantonese. Tamil is widely used by indigenous communities. Singaporean English is based on British English, as Singapore was once a British colony, but has some American influences. When Singapore gained independence in 1965, the use of English became even more popular. It is the most widely used language in business and in the educational system. It is also the most common language in Singaporean literature. Most of the people of Singapore speak a located dialect of English called Singlish or Singaporean English, which can be difficult for foreigners to understand at first. It is based on standard English with influences and words in Chinese, Malay, and Indian languages. Singapore has 5,838,719 inhabitants. The predominant religion in Singapore is Buddhism, with 42% of the population. Islam is the second religion, with 14.9% of the population, practiced mainly by the Malay ethnic group. The third religion, with 14.6%, is Christianity. These are its branch: Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant. The fourth most important religion is Taoism, with 8%, and some inhabitants practice Hinduism. The Singapore dollar is the official currency of Singapore. One Singapore dollar is 16.96 Mexican pesos and 0.17 US dollar. In accordance with Singapore's constitution, the country has a representative democratic parliamentary system of government, with a president as head of state and a prime minister as head of government. The country practices a multi-party political system with democratic elections.
The Singapore Constitution defines the Singapore government as the executive branch and is made up of the President, the Prime Minister, and the Cabinet. The President is the head of state, but he is not the head of government and is therefore primarily ceremonial. The powers conferred on the presidency are divided into the powers that it can exercise at its discretion and those that can only be exercised with advice of the cabinet. The president is responsible for making appointments, including the appointment of the prime minister and cabinet, as well as the approval of financial budgets to be used by its authority boards. The president is elected by a popular vote in democratic elections and serves 6-year terms. The Prime Minister is the head of the government and is the head of the cabinet.
Singapore's political situation has been modified by its enormous stability, with a single ruling party and virtually non-existent opposition. This internal tranquility has allowed the government to focus on international relations, establishing a large number of agreements, both commercial and political, with various countries and international organizations. This presence has enabled Singapore to play an important role in international politics despite its small size and relative economic power. The president of Singapore is Halima Jacob, and the prime minister is Lee Hsien Loong.
Political risk in Singapore is relatively low. In fact, according to the Political and Economic Risk Consultancy, PERC, Singapore enjoys the lowest political risk in Asia. Singapore, being a democratic country, has elected representatives to rule the nation. It has, since independence, enjoyed relative political stability, which has transformed into better business opportunities for the nation. Singapore scores 94.8 in Fitch Solutions Short-Term Political Risk Index, ranking first globally, due to limited domestic political risk resulting from the ruling People's Action Party's dominance of the political landscape. This ensures continued policy certainty, and it's a key factor behind the city-state's favorable business environment. A key challenge will be a shift of power of the fourth-generation leader over the coming years. In addition, Singapore is stated as a major trend who means exposed into the negative economic effects of rising global trade protectionism. Singapore's long-term political risk scores 81.1 is considerably lower, owning the lack of a credible opposition, which arguably possesses risks of insufficient checks and balances of the ruling party.
Singapore's economic freedom score is 89.4, making it the world's freest economy in the 2020 index. Its overall score is unchanged from 2019, with a small improvement in the business freedom score offset by a small decline in the government integrity score. Singapore is ranked the first among 42 countries in the Asia-Pacific region, and its overall score is well above the regional and world average. Singapore has ranked among the freest economic in the world over the life of the index, but gains the top this year for the first time. Its sustained extraordinary performance has resulted in one of the world's highest per capita incomes and solid rates of GDP growth. Singapore is the only country in the world that is considered economically free in every index category. Ongoing restriction on civil liberties, while not directly affecting the country's score, may have an indirect impact on economic freedom and remain a concern. Singapore is one of the world's most prosperous nations, with a business-friendly regulated environment and a very low unemployment rate. Despite an active parliamentary opposition, it has been ruled by one party, the People's Action Party (PAP), for many decades. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has led the government since 2004 and will oversee a PAP leadership transition before the next parliamentary election, which is slated for 2020. Although certain civil liberties remain restricted, the PAP has championed economic liberation and international trade. Services dominate the economic, but Singapore is also a major manufacturer of electronic and chemical and operator one of the world's largest ports. Principal exports include integrated circuits, refined petroleum, and computers. Rule of law. Property rights are recognized and enforced effectively. Judicial processes are procedurally complete, fair, and reliable, and the judicial is regarded as independent. Although the government does have an overwhelmingly successful record in court cases, the government actively enforces its strong anti-corruption laws and maintains well-institutionalized anti-corruption process. Singapore is considered one of the world's least corrupt countries. The top individual income tax rate is 22%, and the top corporate tax rate is 70%. The overall tax burden equals 40.1% of total domestic income. Government spending has amounted to 70.2% of the country's output GDP over the past 3 years, and budget surplus have averaged 40.7% of GDP. Public debt is equivalent to 108.3% of the GDP. The total value of export and imports of goods and services equal 326.2% of GDP. The average apply tariff rate is 0.1% and 182 non-tariff measures are in force. Foreign and domestic business are treated equal under the law, and nearly all sectors of the economy are open to 100% foreign ownership. The sophisticated financial sector is robust, and the number of foreign banks in the market has steadily increased. The economic should refine this year thanks to the revival of the manufacturing sector and the fiscal stimulus. Furthermore, domestic demand should continue to be resilient in the recovery of fixed investment. However, the balance of risks remains tilted downwards amidst an still uncertain external context due to the situation and persistent trade tension. Focus economic panelists project the economy to grow 1.0% in 2020, which is 0.5% points less than the last month, and 2.2% in 2021. Singapore main export and electronic integrated circuits and microstructure, petroleum or mineral oils. The main destinations for Singapore export are Hong Kong, China, and Malaysia. The main origins of its import are China, Malaysia, other Asian countries, the United States, and South Korea.
Singapore is a tiny country, so tiny that you can drive across the island in just an hour. Despite the size and lack of natural resources, Singapore's 5.6 million people enjoy one of the highest average incomes in the world, ahead of countries like Germany, France, and Japan. The island sits in the middle of an important trade route connecting to Europe. Singapore's excellent strategic location and highly open economic make it attractive for companies looking to conduct business there. Every time, Singapore's logistics sector has built world-class infrastructure and processes. The country is always thinking ahead, and several initiatives built for the future in every part of the logistic chain. Upon completion of the next generation port in 2030, the Singapore port will be able to process the equivalent of 65 million standard shipping containers, making it the largest integrated facility in the world. It is exploring driverless automatic guided vehicles, leveraging smart sensors to detect shipping anomalies, such as piracy, and data analytics to predict traffic congestion spots. To facilitate trade, Singapore launched the world's first in 1989, which digitized and streamlined trade permit approval processes. With over 35 government agencies on this platform, this required the entire government to change its mindset from controlling trade to facilitating trade. Today, permits could be approved electronically using one e-document within minutes. However, each shipment can involve many more parties and documents in the whole supply chain, from manufacturers to logistic companies, trade finance companies, and consumers. Enhanced national single window is currently in the works, in the order to also integrate as many business-to-business transactions as possible into the single digital platform. The key competitive advantages for companies offered by Singapore are low taxes and business-friendly regulation structure, a stable and corruption-free political system, excellent strategic location, world-class infrastructure, low trade barriers and welcoming attitude to foreign investment, and economic focus on knowledge-based industry. The most common business structure is in Singapore: transfer of registration, setting up a representative office, incorporating a subsidiary company, registering as foreign company. The government has also attracted investors to Singapore by ensuring and conducted investment climate and developing the right incentives for private sector participation. Today, 20 of the world's top 25 logistic companies manage their global and regional operations from Singapore. Having so many heavy hitters here motivates local companies to emulate international standards. Extensive consultation with the private sector is also encouraged before public investment is approved to ensure that the infrastructural bill will be meeting realistic business needs. Furthermore, the government encourages the private sector to invest in the complementary infrastructure. A strong private sector partnership ensures the initiatives are commercially sustainable for the long term and do not become a burden of public funds. These three factors, connectivity, infrastructure and processes, and private sector participation, create an integrated ecosystem that allows logistics to thrive. Singapore's success shows that with a forward-thinking vision and much determination, a developing country with a few resources can become a leading logistic hub.
Shake hands with everyone present at a business meeting or social occasion, and shake hands again when leaving. Your handshake should be firm. Singaporeans may bow slightly as they shake your hand. Many Westerns are generally taller than Singaporeans, so it will be polite to give a small bow. A slight bow for Chinese or older people is polite. It's important to consider the body language. Never touch a person's or child's head. The head is considered sacred. The foot is considered the lowest part of the body and is thought to be unclean. The foot should never be used to point at someone, and you should never show the bottom of your feet. Tapping your foot or fidgeting your legs denotes feebleness and lack of interest. When crossing your legs, do so only by placing one knee over the other. Raise your hand to get someone's attention. Never signal or point at a person with a forefinger. Do not pound your fist on an open palm. This is obscene. The forearm jerk is a rude gesture. Westerners are expected to be punctual for social occasions and business meetings. Call if you are delayed. Tardiness is viewed as a sign of disrespect. Business cards are exchanged upon being introduced. Exchange business cards with both hands after you are introduced. Singaporeans tend to get right down to business in meetings. They are fast-paced and can make decisions quickly. Always talk straight and get right to the point with Singaporeans. You can be direct when dealing with issues of money. Dinner is the most common form of business entertainment, but it is a time to socialize and build relationships rather than discuss business. Don't be surprised if business dinners are scheduled for every night of the week. Most entertainment is done in restaurants. Food is usually put on a table with all dishes served at once and to be shared by all. Drinks and appetizers are uncommon, though they are available in Western restaurants. Be on time for dinner in a Malay home. The dinner is usually served immediately with no drinks or appetizers beforehand. Indians always wash their hands before and after a meal. In a Malay home, you will be given a small bowl of water and a towel. Use the water to wash your hands. Due to different ethnic groups and modern characters of Singaporeans, there are many different attires acceptable. Dress is normally very casual. Western clothing is most common. For business, men should wear white shirts, tie, and slacks. Jackets are usually not required. Women should wear blouses with sleeves and skirts, or pantsuits. Business gifts are generally not exchanged. Use both hands to give someone a gift. Also, a gift given to a guest or the host is not open in the presence of the giver. Be careful of the gift being misinterpreted as a bribe. Even a small gift, never give a governmental official a gift, which might be considered a bribe.